Jiho walked through the medical bay of Station Harmony with his supply kit in hand. The station was quiet today, which was unusual. Most days, someone had a headache or a small cut that needed attention, but today, everything seemed peaceful. He was about to sit down when he heard a sound. It was high-pitched and came from the waiting area. Jiho put down his kit and walked toward the noise. When he turned the corner, he saw something that made him stop. A small creature sat on the floor. It had gray fur that covered its entire body. The fur looked soft, like a cat's fur, but thicker. The creature had 4 legs and a long tail. Its face was flat with large golden eyes. Those eyes were wet with tears. The creature was holding its front left paw up in the air. The paw was swollen and red. Even through the fur, Jiho could see it was twice the normal size. "Hey there," Jiho said softly. He knew this was a Vralian cub. The Vralians had arrived at the station 3 weeks ago. They were here for diplomatic talks with humans. Jiho had seen the adults around the station, but this was the first cub he had met up close. The cub looked at him with wide eyes. It made a small whimpering sound. Jiho knelt down slowly. He did not want to scare the little one. "Let me see that paw," he said in a gentle voice. The cub pulled its paw closer to its chest. It did not trust him yet. "I am a medic," Jiho explained. "I help people who are hurt. I can help you too." The cub tilted its head. It seemed to understand some of his words. Slowly, very slowly, it held out its injured paw. Jiho looked at it carefully. The joint was swollen badly. It was hot to the touch. The cub flinched when he pressed it gently. "You hurt this pretty bad," Jiho said. "What happened? Were you playing too rough?" The cub made a chirping sound. It sounded sad. Jiho stood up and went back to his supply kit. He knew exactly what this injury needed. It was a simple sprain with some inflammation. Nothing serious, but it would hurt for a while without treatment. He came back with an ice pack and a soft bandage. The ice pack was the gel kind that stayed cold for a long time. Jiho activated it by squeezing it hard. The chemicals inside mixed, and it became cold instantly. The cub watched him with curious eyes. "This will help," Jiho said. He wrapped the ice pack in a thin cloth so it would not be too cold against the cub's skin. Then he gently placed it on the swollen paw. The cub jerked back at first. The cold was a surprise, but then it relaxed. The ice felt good against the hot, painful joint. "See? Not so bad," Jiho said with a smile. He used the soft bandage to hold the ice pack in place. He wrapped it carefully, making sure it was snug but not too tight. The cub looked down at its paw. Then it looked up at Jiho. Its golden eyes were still wet, but it was not crying anymore. "You need to keep that on for about 20 minutes, Jiho said. He knew the cub probably did not understand all his words, but his tone was kind. "Then take it off for 20 minutes. Then put it back on. Do that a few times today and tomorrow. The swelling will go down." The cub chirped again. This time it sounded happier. Jiho sat down on the floor next to the cub. He wanted to make sure the ice pack stayed in place. The cub leaned against him slightly. It was warm and soft. "Where are your parents?" Jiho asked. "They must be worried about you." As if answering his question, the doors to the medical bay opened with a loud hiss. 2 large Vralians rushed inside. They were much bigger than the cub. Their fur was darker, almost black. They had the same golden eyes. The female Vralian saw her cub and ran toward it. She made loud, worried sounds. The male was right behind her. When they reached the cub, they stopped suddenly. They stared at Jiho. Then they stared at the cub's bandaged paw. Then back at Jiho. Jiho stood up slowly. He raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "The cub was injured," he explained. "I am a medic. I helped with the swelling." The female Vralian leaned down and sniffed her cub. She sniffed the bandage. She sniffed Jiho. Her eyes went very wide. The male Vralian stepped forward. He looked at Jiho for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed his head low. You're welcome, Jiho said. He was confused but tried to be polite. The female Vralian made a series of clicking sounds. The male responded with his own clicks. They seemed to be having a conversation that Jiho could not understand. The cub stood up on 3 legs, keeping the injured paw up. It walked over to Jiho and rubbed its head against his leg. It was purring, a deep rumbling sound that Jiho could feel through his shoes. I just put ice on the injury, Jiho said. He felt like he needed to explain more. It is standard human first aid. The cold helps with swelling and pain. Nothing special. But the way the 2 adult Vralians were looking at him made him feel like he had done something very important, something that went beyond simple medical care. The male Vralian spoke. His voice was deep and rough, but Jiho's translator earpiece picked it up. You have comforted our young, the Vralian said. You have claimed Puffy. Claimed what? Jiho asked. He was very confused now. The female Vralian chirped something to her cub. The cub chirped back happily, holding up its bandaged paw like a prize. I just helped, Jiho said weakly. It is my job. The male and female Vralians looked at each other. Then they both looked back at Jiho. There was something in their eyes that he could not quite read. Respect? Gratitude? Something else? The male Vralian bowed again. We will inform the pack, he said. Before Jiho could ask what that meant, the 2 adult Vralians gently guided their cub toward the door. The cub looked back at Jiho and chirped one more time. Then they were gone. Jiho stood alone in the medical bay. He looked down at his hands. They still felt cold from handling the ice pack. That was strange, he said to himself. He had no idea how strange things were about to become. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness had just changed everything. He had no idea that by applying an ice pack to an injured cub, he had accidentally performed one of the most sacred rituals in Vralian culture. All Jiho knew was that he had helped someone who was hurt. That was what medics did. That was what humans did. It was enough. The next morning, Jiho woke up to a strange sound outside his quarters. It was a rhythmic thumping, like someone drumming on the metal walls of the station. He groaned and rolled over, checking the time. It was barely 6 in the morning. The thumping continued. Jiho got out of bed and pulled on his uniform. His quarters were small but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom. Everything a person needed on a space station. He walked to the door and pressed the button to open it. Outside stood 5 Vralians. They were all adults, tall and covered in thick fur. Their golden eyes stared at him with intense focus. The one in front held a large woven basket. Hello? Jiho said. He was still half asleep. The Vralian in front stepped forward and thrust the basket into Jiho's hands. It was heavy. When Jiho looked inside, he saw fruit. Strange alien fruit in colors he had never seen before. Purple ones with spikes. Blue ones that glowed faintly. Green ones that smelled like cinnamon. Thank you, Jiho said slowly. But I do not understand. Why are you giving me this? The Vralian who gave him the basket spoke. The translator in Jiho's ear buzzed to life. You are Puffy now. Pack provides for Puffy. This is the way. Before Jiho could respond, the 5 Vralians turned and walked away. Their tails swished behind them as they disappeared down the corridor. Jiho stood in his doorway holding a basket of alien fruit. He blinked a few times. Then he went back inside and set the basket on his desk. What is happening? He muttered to himself. He got ready for work, still confused. When he arrived at the medical bay, his colleague Hana was already there. She was organizing supplies in the storage room. "Morning," Jiho said. "Morning," Hana replied without looking up. "Did something happen with you and the Vralians yesterday?" Jiho froze. "How did you know?" Hana turned around. She had a strange expression on her face, half amused, half concerned. "Because there are 12 Vralians in the station cafeteria asking where you are. They have more baskets, and what looks like furniture. And they are arguing with station security about den assignments." "Den assignments?" Jiho repeated. "What are those?" "I have no idea," Hana said, "but I think you should come with me." They walked together to the cafeteria. As they got closer, Jiho could hear voices, lots of voices, human voices and Vralian voices, all talking over each other. When they entered the cafeteria, Jiho stopped walking. The entire room was full of Vralians. There had to be at least 30 of them. They filled every corner of the space. Some were arranging baskets of food on tables. Others were measuring the walls with strange devices. A few were arguing with Commander Doyun, the head of station security. Doyun saw Jiho and immediately walked over. He was a tall man with gray hair and a permanent frown. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I helped a cub with a sprained paw," Jiho said defensively. "I put ice on it. That is all." "That is not all," Doyun said. He pointed at the crowd of Vralians. "They say you are part of their pack now. They say you performed the claiming of Puffy. They want to assign you living quarters in their section of the station. They want to include you in all pack activities. They want to adopt you." Jiho felt his face go pale. "Adopt me. I am a grown man. I am 28 years old." "Try telling them that," Doyun said. One of the Vralians approached them. It was the male from yesterday, the father of the injured cub. He bowed his head when he reached Jiho. "Puffy," he said warmly, "the pack is honored by your presence. We have prepared gifts. We have selected a den for you near the cublings. You will teach them human ways." "Wait," Jiho said, holding up his hands. "There has been a misunderstanding. I did not adopt anyone. I just provided medical care. Humans do this all the time. We help those who are injured. It does not mean we are joining families." The Vralian tilted his head. "You gave comfort to a cub in pain. You touched the cub with gentleness. You wrapped the injured limb with your own hands. You stayed beside the cub until parents arrived. This is Puffy claiming. This is how new pack is made." Hana stepped forward. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision. "In human culture, medical care is separate from family bonds. When Jiho helped your cub, he was acting as a healer, not as a family member." The Vralian looked confused. "But he touched the cub. He gave comfort. He used cold magic to ease pain. Actions speak truth. Words are wind." "It was not magic," Jiho said. "It was just ice, frozen water. It reduces swelling." "You gave what the cub needed most," the Vralian said firmly. "You did not ask for payment. You did not ask for permission. You simply acted with kindness. This is the way of Puffy. This is the way of pack." More Vralians gathered around. They all nodded in agreement. They made clicking sounds that seemed to mean approval. Jiho looked at Hana desperately. She looked back at him with sympathy, but no solutions. Commander Doyun cleared his throat loudly. "Perhaps we need to speak with your pack leader," he suggested. "There must be a way to explain this misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," a new voice said. It was deep and powerful. A large Vralian pushed through the crowd. This one was bigger than all the others. His fur was silver and black. Scars marked his face and arms. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. "I am Kral, leader of the Starfang pack. The human Jiho has claimed Puffy with young Kiva. This cannot be undone." "It was an accident," Jiho pleaded. "Accidents do not exist in matters of the heart," Kral said. "You felt compassion for a suffering cub. You acted on that compassion. Whether you knew our customs or not does not matter." The bond is formed. Jiho felt panic rising in his chest. But I cannot be part of your pack. I am human. I have duties here. I have my own life. Kral studied him for a long moment. We do not ask you to abandon your life. We ask you to expand it. Pack does not limit. Pack enhances. You remain yourself, but now you are also ours. We are also yours. This is insane, Jiho muttered. A small chirping sound interrupted the conversation. Everyone turned. The injured cub from yesterday limped into the cafeteria. Its paw was still bandaged, but it looked much better. The swelling had gone down. The cub saw Jiho and its eyes lit up. It ran toward him, or tried to. It moved on 3 legs, keeping the injured paw up. When it reached Jiho, it rubbed its head against his leg. It purred loudly. It looked up at him with complete trust and affection. Jiho's heart melted a little. He could not help it. The cub was adorable. See, Kral said softly. The cub knows. Cubs always know true hearts. The cub chirped and held up its bandaged paw, showing it to the other Vralians proudly. They all made approving sounds. Some of them touched their own chests, a gesture that seemed to mean respect or acknowledgement. Hana leaned close to Jiho and whispered, I think you might be in trouble. You think? Jiho whispered back. Commander Doyen sighed heavily. This is going to require a lot of paperwork. Kral clapped his large paws together, making a sound like thunder. Then it is settled. Jiho is Puffy. The pack claims him. We will celebrate tonight with a feast. All humans are invited. We will share stories and food. We will honor the new bond. The Vralians cheered. The sound filled the cafeteria and echoed through the station corridors. Jiho stood frozen in place. In less than 24 hours, he had gone from a simple medic doing his job to an adopted member of an alien pack. He had no idea how this had happened. He had no idea how to fix it. All he had done was put ice on a cub's paw. The cub chirped happily at his feet, completely unaware of the chaos it had caused. Jiho looked down at it. Despite everything, he could not bring himself to be angry. The cub was innocent. It was just happy to feel better. This is going to be complicated, Jiho said quietly. Yes, Hana agreed. Very complicated. But as the Vralians began to sing a traditional pack song, loud and joyful and slightly off-key, Jiho found himself smiling just a little. Maybe complicated was not always bad. Maybe it was just different. The feast that night was unlike anything Jiho had ever experienced. The Vralians took over the largest gathering hall on Station Harmony. They covered every surface with colorful fabrics. They hung lights that changed colors slowly from blue to purple to green. The air smelled of roasted meat and sweet spices. Jiho arrived wearing his normal uniform. He immediately realized this was a mistake. Every Vralian wore ceremonial decorations, beads woven into fur, metal bands around arms and tails, paint in intricate patterns on their faces. Little Kiva ran up to him immediately. The cub's paw was much better now. It could walk on all 4 legs again, though it still favored the injured one slightly. Puffy! Kiva chirped. The cub grabbed Jiho's hand with its small paws and tried to drag him deeper into the hall. Okay, Jiho said with a laugh. I am coming. Kiva led him to a raised platform at the front of the hall. There were cushions arranged in a circle. Kral sat in the center, and he gestured for Jiho to sit beside him. The place of honor, Kral explained. You are guest of highest respect tonight. Jiho sat down awkwardly. The cushion was comfortable but very low to the ground. His knees stuck up at odd angles. Several young Vralians giggled at the sight. Hana arrived a few minutes later with Commander Doyen. They found seats near the back. Hana gave Jiho a sympathetic look. Doyen just shook his head slowly, as if he still could not believe this situation was real. The feast began with a ceremony. Kral stood and spoke in the Vralian language. Jiho's translator struggled to keep up with all the words. Something about honor and family and bonds that could not break. Something about the old ways and new friendships. Something about humans being strange but good-hearted. Then Kral held up a bowl. It was carved from dark wood and filled with a thick red liquid. He drank from it, then passed it to Jiho. Jiho stared at the bowl. "What is this?" "Blood wine," Kral said proudly. "Traditional drink for pack ceremonies. Not real blood, just berries that look like blood. Very sweet, very strong." Jiho sniffed it carefully. It smelled like cherries mixed with something spicy. He took a small sip. It was sweet, just as Kral said. But it burned going down his throat. His eyes watered. The Vralians cheered loudly. They thought his reaction was funny. The bowl continued around the circle. Each Vralian drank and passed it on. When it came back to Kral, he set it aside and clapped his paws together. "Let the feast begin," he declared. Food appeared from everywhere. Plates and bowls carried by dozens of Vralians. There was roasted meat that Jiho did not recognize. There were vegetables in bright colors. There were breads that smelled like honey. There were fruits that sparkled in the light. Kiva stayed close to Jiho the entire time. The cub brought him small portions of everything, insisting he try each dish. Some were delicious. Some were strange. One purple thing tasted like soap and made his tongue go numb. "Not good?" Kiva asked, noticing Jiho's expression. "Different," Jiho said diplomatically. "Very different." The cub seemed satisfied with this answer. As the feast continued, things got stranger. Different Vralians approached the platform to speak with Jiho. They brought gifts, more baskets of food, carved wooden figures, a soft blanket made from some kind of alien fiber, a set of clothes tailored to fit a human but decorated in Vralian style. One elderly Vralian with white fur gave Jiho a small crystal on a leather cord. "This was my mother's," she said solemnly. "Now it is yours. You are Pack. Pack shares treasures." Jiho tried to refuse. "I cannot take something so valuable." The elderly Vralian looked offended. "You reject my gift? You reject my place in Pack?" "No, no," Jiho said quickly. "I accept. Thank you. It is beautiful." She smiled, satisfied, and walked away. Hana appeared at his elbow. She had managed to make her way through the crowd. "You look overwhelmed," she observed. "I am overwhelmed," Jiho admitted. "They keep giving me things. They keep calling me family. I just helped a cub with a swollen paw. This is too much." "To them, it is not too much," Hana said. She sat down beside him on the edge of the platform. "I did some research today. The claiming of Puffy is a very old tradition. When a Vralian comforts a cub that is not their own, especially in a time of pain, it creates a bond. The Pack sees it as that person saying, 'I will protect all cubs as if they were mine.' It is a sacred promise." "But I did not know I was making a promise," Jiho protested. "Intent does not matter in their culture," Hana explained. "Only actions matter. You acted with kindness. That is the promise." Jiho put his head in his hands. "What am I supposed to do?" "Attend Pack gatherings when you can. Accept their gifts graciously. Be kind to Kiva. That is all they really expect," Hana said. "Think of it like having very enthusiastic extended family." "Very, very extended," Jiho muttered. A gong rang through the hall. Everyone fell silent. Kral stood up again. "Now we will share stories," he announced. "Each member of Pack will tell of their greatest moment. We begin with our newest member. Jiho, tell us your story." Every eye in the room turned to Jiho. He felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. "I do not have a great story," he said. "All lives have great stories," Kral insisted. "Tell us why you became a healer." Jiho hesitated. He did not like talking about himself. But the Vralians waited patiently. Even the cubs sat still, their golden eyes fixed on him. "I became a medic because I wanted to help people," Jiho said slowly. "When I was young, my sister got very sick. The doctor saved her life. I saw how much difference one person could make. I wanted to be that person for others." The Vralians listened intently. Some nodded. Some made soft clicking sounds of approval. "Is your sister well now?" Kral asked. "Yes," Jiho said. "She is a teacher on Earth. She helps children learn." "A whole family of helpers," Kral said warmly. "This explains much. You have the heart of protector. This is why you acted without thinking when you saw Kiva in pain. Your instinct is to heal. This is good. This is very good." The Vralians murmured in agreement. One by one, other pack members stood and told their stories. Tales of hunts and battles. Tales of love and loss. Tales of cubs being born and elders passing away. Each story was listened to with complete attention. When someone finished, the others would thump their tails on the ground in appreciation. The evening wore on. Jiho found himself relaxing despite his confusion. The Vralians were warm and welcoming. Their traditions were strange but not unpleasant. They laughed easily and often. They touched each other constantly, grooming fur and rubbing heads together in affection. Kiva eventually fell asleep against Jiho's leg. The cub was heavy and warm. Its fur was incredibly soft. Jiho found himself stroking it gently, the way he might pet a cat. Kiva's mother, whose name was Shara, smiled at him from across the circle. "The cub trusts you completely," she said. "This is rare. Cubs are careful with strangers. But Kiva knew your heart from the first moment." "I am not used to this," Jiho admitted. "Humans do not form family bonds so quickly." "Perhaps they should," Shara suggested. "Life is short. Why waste time on suspicion when you could spend it on love?" Jiho had no answer to that. As the feast finally wound down, Vralians began to leave. They each stopped to touch Jiho's shoulder or arm as they passed, a gesture of connection, a gesture of acceptance. Commander Doyen approached as Jiho was trying to figure out how to stand up without waking Kiva. "I spoke with the diplomatic corps," Doyen said. "They say to go along with this for now. The Vralians are important allies. If being adopted by their pack helps relations, then so be it." "So I am officially part of alien family now?" Jiho asked. "Officially, you are a human medic doing your job," Doyen said. "Unofficially, yes. You are part of an alien family. Try not to cause any incidents." "I will do my best," Jiho said weakly. Doyen left. Hana helped Jiho gently move Kiva to its mother's arms without waking it. Shara cradled her cub tenderly. "You did well tonight," she told Jiho. "The pack is pleased. Kiva is pleased. This is what matters." As Jiho walked back to his quarters, his arms full of gifts, he tried to process everything. He had woken up that morning as a simple medic. He was going to sleep as a member of the Starfang pack. His life had become very complicated very quickly. But when he reached his room and unpacked the gifts, he found himself smiling. The carved wooden figures were beautiful. The blanket was incredibly soft. The crystal on the cord caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. These were not just objects. They were symbols of acceptance, of belonging. Maybe being part of a pack would not be so bad after all. Maybe humans and Vralians were not so different. Maybe kindness was a universal language. 3 weeks passed quickly. Jiho's life had changed in ways he never expected. Every morning, he woke to find small gifts outside his door. Flowers from the station's hydroponic gardens, drawings made by Vralian cubs, sometimes food that he could not identify but tried to eat anyway to be polite. He learned the Vralian greeting, a complicated motion with hands and a slight bow of the head. He learned their word for thank you, which sounded like rocks clicking together. He learned which foods made him sick and which ones he actually enjoyed. The hardest part was the pack gatherings. There was one every 3 days. Sometimes they were quiet affairs with just conversation. Sometimes they were loud celebrations with music and dancing. Jiho was expected to attend all of them. Commander Doyun had made it clear this was now part of his duties. "Consider it diplomatic work," Doyun had said. "We need the Vralians on our side. If that means you eat dinner with them twice a week, then you eat dinner with them twice a week." So Jiho attended. And slowly, very slowly, he began to understand the pack. The Vralians valued loyalty above everything else. Once someone was part of the pack, they would defend that person with their lives. They shared everything freely: food, shelter, knowledge, joy, sorrow. Nothing was kept private. Nothing was considered too personal to discuss. This was difficult for Jiho. Humans valued privacy. They kept certain things to themselves, but the Vralians saw privacy as a form of rejection. If you would not share your thoughts and feelings, it meant you did not trust the pack. Jiho learned to share more than he was comfortable with. He told them about his childhood, his fears, his dreams, things he had never told anyone except maybe his sister. The Vralians listened to everything with complete attention. They never judged. They never criticized. They simply accepted him as he was. Kiva became his shadow. The cub followed him everywhere. To the medical bay during his shifts, to the cafeteria for meals, to the observation deck when Jiho needed quiet time to think. At first, Jiho found this annoying. He was not used to having someone with him constantly, but Kiva was a good listener. The cub would sit quietly while Jiho worked, watching with curious golden eyes. Sometimes Kiva would ask questions about human medicine or human customs. The questions were simple but thoughtful. "Why do humans wear so many clothes?" Kiva asked one day. "We do not have fur to keep us warm," Jiho explained, "and we have customs about covering our bodies in public." "That seems uncomfortable," Kiva observed. "It can be," Jiho admitted. Kiva thought about this for a moment. Vralians think bodies are just bodies. Nothing to hide. Nothing to be ashamed of. "Humans think differently," Jiho said. "But neither way is wrong. Just different." Kiva seemed to accept this. The cub was good at accepting differences. Jiho began teaching Kiva and the other young Vralians about human medicine. They were fascinated by the concept of sterile environments and antibiotics. Vralian medicine was more natural, based on herbs and careful bone setting. The idea of killing bacteria with chemicals amazed them. "Does it hurt?" one young Vralian asked. "No," Jiho said. "You cannot feel bacteria dying. It happens too small for your body to notice." "Magic," the young Vralian whispered. "Science," Jiho corrected gently. "But I suppose to someone who does not know the science, it might seem like magic." He also learned from them. Shara, Kiva's mother, taught him about Vralian herbs that could stop bleeding. Kral showed him pressure points on the Vralian body that could relieve pain. An old healer named Torv explained how to set broken bones using only hands and wooden splints. Hana watched this exchange of knowledge with approval. "You are building bridges," she told Jiho one afternoon. They were having lunch together in the cafeteria. "This is exactly what first contact should look like. Learning from each other, growing together." "I still feel like I am pretending," Jiho confessed. "I smile and participate, but inside I am confused most of the time." "That is normal," Hana assured him. "Culture shock takes months or even years to fully process. You are doing better than most people would." "I had an ice pack," Jiho said flatly. "That is the only reason any of this happened. One ice pack changed my entire life." Hana laughed. "Sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest consequences. That is the nature of chaos theory. A butterfly flaps its wings and causes a hurricane halfway across the world." "I am the butterfly," Jiho said. "You are the butterfly," Hana agreed, still smiling. One evening, Crawl invited Jiho to his private quarters. This was unusual. Pack meetings were always public affairs. Private invitations were rare and significant. Jiho arrived at the appointed time. Crawl's quarters were larger than his own, decorated with weapons and trophies from hunts. Animal hides covered the walls. Carved tusks hung from the ceiling. It looked like a museum of Vralian history. "Sit," Crawl said, gesturing to cushions on the floor. Jiho sat. Crawl poured 2 cups of something that steamed and smelled like cinnamon. "I wanted to speak with you alone," Crawl began. "Away from the others." "Is something wrong?" Jiho asked, worried. "No, nothing wrong," Crawl assured him. "I wanted to know how you truly feel. Not the polite face you show at gatherings. Your real feelings." Jiho hesitated, but Crawl's golden eyes were kind and patient. "I feel overwhelmed," Jiho admitted. "I feel like I am constantly doing things wrong or misunderstanding situations. I feel like an outsider pretending to belong." Crawl nodded slowly. "This is honest. I appreciate honesty." "I do not mean to insult the pack," Jiho added quickly. "You have not insulted anyone," Crawl said. "You are in a difficult position. You were adopted without choice. You are learning a new culture while also maintaining your own. This is hard. We understand this." "Then why do you push so hard?" Jiho asked. "Why all the gatherings and gifts and expectations?" "Because you saved Kiva from pain," Crawl said simply. "In our culture, this creates a debt, not a debt of money or favor, a debt of heart. We must show you that your kindness was seen and valued. We must include you in our lives because you included yourself in Kiva's life when it mattered most." "I was just doing my job," Jiho protested. "Your job is to heal all who come to you, yes?" Crawl asked. "But you could have been cold and distant. You could have treated the injury and sent Kiva away. Instead, you sat with the cub. You spoke gently. You showed care beyond duty. That is what we honor, not the medical skill, the compassion." Jiho felt something tighten in his chest. He had not thought about it that way. "Humans show compassion too," Jiho said quietly. "It is not special." "It is always special," Crawl disagreed. "Kindness is never common. It is precious. When we find it, we hold on to it. We celebrate it. We protect it." They sat in silence for a moment. The steam from the drinks made small clouds in the air. "I will try harder," Jiho said finally. "I will try to understand your ways better." "You already understand more than you think," Crawl said. "You came tonight even though you were nervous. You attend gatherings even when you are tired. You spend time with Kiva even though you are busy. These actions speak louder than any words. The pack sees your effort. We appreciate it." "Thank you," Jiho said. He meant it. Crawl smiled, showing sharp teeth that looked dangerous but somehow were not. "You are good for us," he said. "You show us different ways of thinking. You bring new ideas. The cubs love you. The elders respect you. Even the warriors, who are suspicious of everyone, have accepted you." "I did not realize warriors were suspicious," Jiho said. "Warriors are always suspicious," Crawl said with a laugh. "It is their nature. They look for threats everywhere. But they see no threat in you. Only kindness. This is high praise from warriors." As Jiho left Crawl's quarters later that night, he felt different. Lighter somehow. The conversation had helped him understand what the Vralians wanted from him. Not perfection, not complete transformation into one of them. Just effort, just presence, just continued compassion. He could do that. When he returned to his own quarters, he found Kiva curled up outside his door. The cub was asleep, waiting for him. Jiho knelt down and gently woke the cub. "You should be with your parents," he said softly. Kiva blinked sleepy eyes. "Wanted to make sure you came home safe." "I am safe," Jiho said. "Go to bed." Kiva stood and stretched. Then the cub did something unexpected. It pressed its forehead against Jiho's forehead, a Vralian gesture of deep affection, usually reserved for close family. "Puffy," Kiva whispered. Then the cub ran off down the corridor toward home. Jiho stood alone in the hallway. His hand touched his forehead where Kiva had pressed. The spot felt warm. Something had changed inside him. He was not sure exactly what or when, but somewhere over the past 3 weeks, the Vralians had stopped being strangers. They had become something more, not quite family in the human sense, but not strangers either, something in between, something new. And Jiho realized he was okay with that. The alarm started at 4 in the morning, a harsh, mechanical scream that echoed through every corridor of Station Harmony. Jiho jolted awake, his heart racing. He had never heard this alarm before. It was not the fire alarm or the medical emergency alarm. This was something worse. He grabbed his communicator from the bedside table. "This is Jiho. What is happening?" Hana's voice crackled through the speaker. "Unknown ships approaching the station. They are not responding to hails. Commander Doyen has called all personnel to emergency stations. Medical Bay needs you now." Jiho was already pulling on his uniform. "On my way." The corridors were full of people running in different directions. Humans heading to their emergency posts. Vralians gathering their cubs and moving toward the reinforced shelters. Everyone looked scared. Jiho reached the medical bay in under 3 minutes. Hana was already there, pulling out emergency supplies, trauma kits, blood substitutes, surgical tools. "What do we know?" Jiho asked as he started helping her prepare. 3 ships, Hana said, her voice tight with tension. "Military grade. They have not identified themselves. They are ignoring all communication. Commander Doyen thinks they might be pirates or raiders." "This far out?" Jiho asked. Station Harmony was in a relatively safe sector of space. "Apparently not as safe as we thought," Hana replied. The communicator on the wall buzzed. Doyen's voice came through. "All medical personnel, be prepared for casualties. Security teams are moving into defensive positions. Civilians should remain in shelters until further notice." Jiho and Hana looked at each other. They both knew what this meant. The station was preparing for an attack. "I should check on the Vralians," Jiho said suddenly. "Make sure they got to the shelters." "The shelters are this way," Hana pointed out. "You cannot leave Medical Bay." But Jiho was already moving. Something in his gut told him he needed to make sure the pack was safe, especially Kiva. He grabbed a portable medical kit and ran. The Vralian section of the station was in chaos. Adults were herding cubs toward the nearest shelter, but several young ones were crying and refusing to move. They were scared of the small, enclosed space. Shara saw Jiho and relief flooded her face. "Puffy, thank the stars, the cubs will not go inside." "They are too frightened." Jiho dropped to his knees in front of the group of scared cubs. Kiva was among them, eyes wide with fear. "Listen to me," Jiho said firmly but gently. "I know you are scared, but the shelter is the safest place right now. Your parents need you to be brave." "What if bad things come?" Kiva asked, voice trembling. "Then the adults will protect you," Jiho said. "That is what adults do, but we can only protect you if you are somewhere safe." The cubs looked at each other uncertainly. Jiho made a decision. "I will come with you. I will stay in the shelter until the danger passes." "You promise?" Kiva asked. "I promise," Jiho said. That was all it took. The cubs agreed to enter the shelter if Jiho came with them. Shara gave him a grateful look as she guided her children inside. Jiho followed, pulling the heavy door closed behind them. The shelter was cramped. About 30 Vralians and 1 human packed into a space meant for 20. The cubs pressed close to their parents. The adults kept their ears perked, listening for any sounds from outside. Kiva sat in Jiho's lap, trembling slightly. Jiho stroked the cub's fur in a soothing rhythm. "Tell us a story," Kiva said quietly, "to distract us." Other cubs picked up the request. "Yes, a story. A human story." Jiho thought for a moment. Then he began to speak. "Once upon a time, there was a small planet called Earth. It was covered in water and land and millions of different creatures. The humans on Earth were curious. They always wanted to know what was beyond their world. So they built ships that could fly among the stars." The cubs listened intently, their fear momentarily forgotten. The humans traveled far from home. They met many other species. Some were friendly, some were not. But the humans believed that most beings in the universe wanted the same things: safety for their families, food in their bellies, a place to call home. A distant explosion rocked the station. The cubs whimpered, the adults tensed. But Jiho kept talking. The humans learned that the best weapon was not a gun or a bomb. It was compassion. When they showed kindness to others, those others often showed kindness back. And slowly, the humans built friendships across the stars. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered. Sometimes there were those who did not want friendship, Jiho continued, his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. Those who wanted to take and hurt and destroy, but the humans and their friends stood together because together they were stronger than any enemy. The door to the shelter shook as something loud happened in the corridor outside. Jiho pulled Kiva closer. Suddenly, voices echoed outside, shouting in a language the translator could not interpret. Then the sound of weapons firing, energy weapons, the kind that made a sharp crackling noise. The Vralian adults moved to put themselves between the door and the cubs. They were unarmed, but they would fight with claws and teeth if they had to. Jiho stood up, putting Kiva down gently. "Stay behind the adults," he told the cub. "Where are you going?" Kiva asked, voice small with fear. "To see what is happening," Jiho said. He moved to the door and pressed his ear against it. He could hear fighting, human voices, Vralian voices, other voices he did not recognize. Then a familiar voice, Kral. "You will not touch our young," Kral roared. "You will go through me first." Jiho made a decision that was probably foolish but felt necessary. He opened the shelter door. The corridor outside was a war zone. Strange beings in armor were trying to force their way deeper into the station. Human security forces were fighting them, but they were outnumbered. And there, in the middle of it all, was Kral and a dozen Vralian warriors. They were fighting with a ferocity Jiho had never seen. One of the armored invaders aimed a weapon at the shelter door, at Jiho, at the cubs behind him. Kral saw it and launched himself through the air. He crashed into the invader, bearing them to the ground. His claws tore through armor. His teeth found flesh. It was brutal and terrifying and absolutely effective. Other Vralians fought just as fiercely. They moved as a unit, protecting each other's backs. They were not trained soldiers, but they fought like demons. Because their pack was threatened. Their cubs were threatened. Commander Doyen appeared from a side corridor with reinforcements. "Push them back," he ordered. The combined force of humans and Vralians turned the tide. The invaders began to retreat. They had not expected such fierce resistance. They had not expected their victims to fight back so hard. Within minutes, it was over. The invaders fled back to their ships. Station weapons had damaged their vessels enough that they decided the fight was not worth it. They jumped to faster-than-light travel and disappeared. The all-clear alarm sounded. Jiho stood in the corridor shaking with adrenaline. He had not fought. He had just stood there. But he had been willing to stand between danger and the cubs. That was what mattered. Kral approached him. The Vralian was covered in blood, some his own, some not. But his eyes were bright with fierce pride. "You opened the door," Kral said. "You put yourself in danger to see if the pack needed help." "Of course I did," Jiho said. "They are my pack, too." Kral placed a massive paw on Jiho's shoulder. The gesture was heavy and warm. "Yes," he said simply. They are. The other Vralians emerged from the shelter. Cubs ran to their parents. Parents checked their children for injuries. Everyone was crying or laughing or doing both at once. Kiva ran straight to Jiho and wrapped small arms around his legs. You kept your promise. You stayed with us. I did, Jiho said, kneeling down to the cub's level. And I always will. That is what Puffy means. That is what Pack means. Later, after the wounded were treated and the station was secured, there was an emergency meeting. Commander Doyen stood at the front of the main hall. Humans and Vralians filled the seats. Today we faced an attack, Doyen said, but we stood together, humans and Vralians. We protected each other. We fought for each other. This is the strength of alliance. This is what cooperation means. Kral stood and spoke. We have learned much from humans. They are small but fierce. They are soft but strong. And they keep their promises. When one human said he would protect our cubs, he meant it, even at risk to himself. All eyes turned to Jiho. He felt his face burn with embarrassment. I just did what anyone would do, Jiho said. No, Shara stood now. You did what Pack does, and that is why we claim you. That is why you are Puffy. Not because of medical skill, not because of duty, because when it mattered most, you chose to stand with us. The hall erupted in sound, humans applauding, Vralians thumping their tails. It was loud and overwhelming, and Jiho wanted to disappear. But Hana caught his eye from across the room. She was smiling and shaking her head with amusement and affection. She mouthed 2 words, "You butterfly." Jiho laughed despite himself. Yes, he was the butterfly. One small action, putting ice on a cub's paw, had led to all of this, had led to an alliance that stood strong in crisis, had led to friendship across species, had led to protection and loyalty and something that looked very much like family. Kiva climbed onto the stage and grabbed Jiho's hand. The cub held it up like a trophy. My Puffy, Kiva declared proudly. The crowd cheered again. And Jiho, who had spent weeks confused and overwhelmed and feeling like an outsider, finally understood. He was not an outsider. He had never been an outsider. From the moment he showed compassion to a suffering cub, he had been exactly where he belonged. In the days that followed, the story spread. Throughout the station, throughout the diplomatic channels, throughout human and Vralian space, the story of how a human medic became part of an alien pack, the story of how one act of kindness created an unbreakable bond, the story of how humans and Vralians stood together against a common threat. It became a legend, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve, a reminder that compassion was a universal language. And at the center of it all was Jiho, a simple medic, a reluctant pack member, a human who had applied an ice pack to a cub and accidentally changed the course of interspecies relations. He never let it go to his head. He continued his work in the medical bay. He continued attending pack gatherings. He continued teaching cubs about human medicine while learning Vralian healing arts. But now, when he walked through the station, people knew his name. They knew his story, and they understood something important. That humans were not strong because of weapons or technology. They were strong because they cared, because they helped those in need, because when faced with suffering, their first instinct was compassion. That was humanity's true strength. That was what made them remarkable. That was why they would never truly be alone in the universe. Because kindness attracted kindness, compassion created connection, and love, in all its forms, was the strongest force in existence. Jiho learned this from a cub with a swollen paw and an entire pack willing to call him family, and he would never forget it.